from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
All right, let's get on it. Time is running out for you to be part of our annual golf outing presented by Signature Bank. We're once again partnering with the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. They help provide our first responders and military heroes, including our homeless vets. We're excited to help raise money for them, but we need your help, and we want to see you June 18th at McRae Memorial Golf Club in Barrington. We have foursomes and twosomes available. The weather is getting warmer out, so get your twosome or foursome together. You'll enjoy a full day of golf, either in the morning or in the afternoon shotgun start, and we'll have prizes for the winning foursome, longest drive, yada, yada. 560 The Answer /golf is where you sign up, and if you own a business or make marketing decisions for your company, the price, we'll give you a gift. If you purchase a foursome, we'll give you 25 one-minute commercials to air right here on AM 560. 560theanswer.com/golf.
On top of the morning, Dan and Amy, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on the Sunday Talkies over the weekend, discussing the situation with trade deals in the offing, as well as what Trump's tariffs and tariff plays thus far and the contents of the big, beautiful bill have wrought and will. On Face the Nation with the noxious Margaret Brennan, got into a back and forth over the potential inflationary nature of tariffs. But Bessent argued there have been no price increases to date, actually pretty good inflation number last month, and he doesn't expect that China will be imposing at least the majority of any tariffs imposed on American consumers.
We wanted to make sure that there aren't price increases, Margaret, and thus far there have been no price increases. Everything has been alarmist, that the inflation numbers are actually dropping. We saw the first drop of inflation in 4 years. The inflation numbers last week, they were very pro-consumer.
Right. But you listen to earnings calls just like we do. Mm-hmm. You know what Walmart's saying, what Best Buy's saying, and what Target are saying.
But Margaret, I also know what Home Depot and Amazon are saying. I know what the South China Morning Post wrote within the past 24 hours, that 65% of the tariffs will likely be eaten by the Chinese producers.
The reality is there will either be less inventory or things at higher prices or both.
When we were here in March, you said there was going to be big inflation. There hasn't been any inflation. Actually, the inflation numbers are the best in 4 years. So why don't we stop trying to say this could happen and wait and see what does happen?
Zing. Yeah, I like Margaret Brennan. You know, you're on these earning calls just like we are. Yeah, the difference, Margaret, is I understand what's being said. He also, by the way, the Atlanta Fed is now predicting 3.8% GDP growth in Q2. So, I mean, there are variables to play out, but if it approaches 4% in Q2, you can dispel any talk of recessions, that's for sure.
And on a pedestrian level, for those of us who go shopping once or twice or 3 times a week, now that your college kids are home, prices are falling. It's refreshing. I finally went to the store and I had this budgeted, and I want my spending power back, and I got it back last week. So hopefully it'll go down even more.
I'm glad that the goldfish prices have come down. Scott Bessent on with Brett Baer,
yes,
having a more enlightened conversation and talking about where trade talks stand with China. They're a bit of a pause right now.
Oh.
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks, and I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
So stalled. There was a time when the president thought that it was moving forward pretty significantly.
again, I think that given the magnitude of the talks, given the complexity, that this is going to require both leaders to weigh in with each other. They have a very good relationship, and I am confident that the Chinese will come to the table when President Trump makes his preferences known.
All right, so let me go.
For more on this, pleased to be joined by Gordon Chang, the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow Gordon Chang on Twitter, or X, I should say, at Gordon G. Chang, C-H-A-N-G, Gordon G. Chang on X. Gordon Chang, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Do we have Gordon?
Mr. Chang, can you hear us? Hello, hello. But
Hello?
There you are. Hello, sir.
Hi, Dan and Amy.
Hello. Let's start with what Scott Bessent had to say about trade talks being a bit stalled right now until perhaps Trump and Xi can get on the blower and have a conversation about their respective priorities. How do you interpret that statement from Bessent?
Well, that's a hopeful statement, but I don't think that there's going to be any progress, even if Xi Jinping and President Trump get on the phone. The problem is that Xi Jinping right now has lost significant power recently, and I'm not so sure he has the authority to deal anymore. And the other thing is, because he has been weakened, I think that it's going to be very difficult for him to make compromises with the United States, because for the last half decade, he's been telling everybody that China, because of his great policies, has surpassed the U.S. and they don't really need to talk to us anymore. So this is a very difficult situation for Xi Jinping, and that makes it a very difficult situation for President Trump if he's relying on Xi to make a deal.
So he's lost power because of previous statements he made that we can go it alone, we don't need America, and now it appears that that's not the case, and so he's lost sort of face on this issue. Is that why his power has been diminished?
His power has been diminished because his policies are seen as aggravating China's problems. Also, Xi Jinping has accumulated substantial power. When he became General Party Secretary in 2012, he inherited a consensual political system. By taking power from everybody else, he accumulated responsibility. He's got nobody else to blame. And there are a lot of people who have been burned by Xi Jinping as he's gotten that power consolidated. So I think it's payback time in China right now. And we are seeing signs that Xi has indeed lost a lot of influence with especially the Chinese military. But also we're starting to see signs he's losing it with civilian leaders as well. So
that's interesting, because I was going to ask, and maybe you've provided the answer, I was going to ask about Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense's comments in a talk he gave warning of China invading Taiwan. Here's what he said.
Clear any attempt by Communist China to conquer Taiwan by force would result in devastating consequences for the Indo-Pacific and the world. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent. We hope not.
But it could be imminent. So is that an indication that Hegseth, the administration, is seeing the same thing you are, and they're worried about a desperate Xi launching an attack on Taiwan to, protect his perch?
Well, during the Secretary's comments, I think he was really worried about a strong China. And he didn't actually talk about whether China lashing out. But I agree with Secretary Hegseth that it could be imminent. Now, I may view it as a different type of threat than the Pentagon does, because I don't think that China will start hostilities by trying to take the main island of Taiwan. But they could end up with hostilities with others. So clearly there is now a very, very difficult situation, and Hegseth is right to warn the world that this could happen very soon.
Well, I mean, what would be the basis then of the hostilities if it's not Xi trying to hold on to power?
Well, we see that China's been engaged in a lot of low-level provocations against South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, and even Australia. And one of those incidents could go wrong. When it does, I don't think that Xi Jinping can deal with the international community in a responsible manner. So I see this spiraling down. And this could be the conflict where you see both North Korea and Russia come in on China's side, and the United States is going to have to defend its allies. So this could be all-encompassing war.
Well, let's talk about tariffs. I mean, do you believe Trump's use of tariffs was a sound strategy, or do you think it's ultimately going to backfire economically?
I think that there is going to be economic costs, but after decades of misguided trade policy and decades of misguided China policy, we Americans shouldn't think we're going to get out of this without cost. And I applaud President Trump's application of tariffs, especially to China. I'd like to see the president apply tariffs in a maybe more disciplined manner, but ultimately this is something that had to be done because the current trajectory was just unsustainable. We had a merchandise trade deficit last year of like $1.1 trillion. That is clearly something we cannot sustain and remain a viable country.
Yeah, and a note in Q1, Rick Santelli was talking about it end of last week. In Q1, year over year, the trade deficit was cut in half if you think those things are important. But with respect to what Bessent said, that in the South China Post reporting that Chinese communist-backed companies are going to eat 65% of the costs of the tariffs. So that still means price increases, but perhaps not on the level that was anticipated. Do you think that's accurate, that they would underwrite those kinds of costs to maintain their market position?
I think the Treasury Secretary is correct. The way I would put it is that Chinese exporters meant also the Chinese state itself could eat 65%. Because remember that the Chinese central government provides subsidies,
right,
and also it does manipulate its currency so as to basically bear the cost. In 2018, when President Trump imposed his tariffs on China, the Chinese ate somewhere between, let's say, 75 to 81% of the cost of those tariffs. And I think that they'll eat a substantial portion of the tariffs this time as well.
I wanted to get your opinion on this piece written by a couple of public affairs professionals that have a practice in China as well as the United States about countering Beijing rather than a one China policy, maintain a many Chinas policy. And what they're discussing is the fallacy that China is a homogenous nation and that there are, regional differences and regional rivalries and ways to, as they say, appeal to a China grounded in regional identities and decentralized loyalties, which makes it less likely that they would unify behind a belligerent foreign policy and thus reduce the risk of a major conflict with the United States. Do you agree that that is an accurate description of China and something to consider?
Well, it is something to consider because there are sharp regional differences, and especially when we're seeing the Chinese political system go through a period of distress, we probably will witness regions trying to strike out on their own. But I don't think that this is something that the United States can really exploit that much, and the reason is we don't know as much as we would like about the Chinese political system. Matter of fact, we know less about it because Xi Jinping has been closing his country off. So I think it makes it difficult for the United States to play Communist Party politics. I hope I'm wrong on that, but nonetheless, we need to have some policies that deal with Xi Jinping and the people who run the country now.
What did you think of Trump's aggressive posture towards Harvard and generally speaking towards Chinese exchange students or Chinese students come over here on a student visa to attend college? The Wall Street Journal headline on the topic over the weekend: Harvard has trained so many Chinese communist officials they call it their party school. Oh. which is Arizona State's.
Wow.
Arizona State's our domestic party school, and I guess Harvard is their party school. But anyway, the administration's posture to shut down the student visa program for Harvard, and also to look at the provision of student visas to Chinese nationals more generally.
Yeah, I applaud what President Trump is doing with regard to Harvard, and the reason is that drastic action is needed. You know, during their commencement, they had a female from China who was basically promoting a worldwide Communist Party rule, and that's wrong. We are in an emergency situation with China, and we could not have someone from Harvard saying that we should be a colony of China. What she was doing was promoting Xi Jinping's destiny, common destiny of humankind, which is Xi Jinping's code, as I mentioned, for going back to what was the imperial era of Tianxia, or all under heaven. The Chinese rulers had the right to rule all under heaven, and actually were compelled by heaven to do so. It sounded nice language that she used, but that was what she was in effect saying, and Harvard was endorsing that. Now, Harvard may have been taken by surprise, or Harvard may not have realized the significance of what it was saying, but clearly they're responsible for this. And so, yes, we do need to impose those costs on Harvard.
Gordon Chang is the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, as well as The Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow him on X at Gordon G. Chang. That's C-H-A-N-G. Gordon G. Chang is his handle on X. Gordon Chang, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, Dan and Amy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Spring, a time to get outside, be active, play with the grandkids, enjoy life. But if high blood pressure